What up, folks? I'm going a little extra long today because I am freaking amped. We got Ruben. Ruben, welcome to the Midlife Crisis podcast. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, man. It's the first podcast been doing, so it's exciting.
All right, I am really happy to have you here, man. We've already talked. We had a little intro call before. Fascinating human being, incredible mind, and I know we're gonna have an incredible conversation. Before that, I got to do a little update about myself. Been working on a couple ventures in the background. They all have been pivoted a bajillion times. So I'm not going to talk much about those, but my District 111, the My District Mint is coming up. Really excited for that. Had a conversation with the team, part of the 111 crew. We're going to do some really cool things, and it's really centered on community. As far as future podcasts coming up, we got Zubik from Space Riders. We're going to be talking to him in a couple weeks. In addition to that, just tons of content coming out. Vacation is coming up, so I'm going to be in and out. Not as many podcasts as you would expect in the future, but I'm not going to give up. Been here for 3 to 4 years, and that just is not going to change. And I am really excited about today. So before we get into the world famous midlife crisis question, we are going to do the same thing that we always do here, which is a nice little formal introduction with my man Ruben. So Ruben is one of the most interesting people that we have had on the podcast because he's done a lot of really cool things. First off, co-concepted, built, and scaled that at the point was one of the largest corporate esports leagues in the world, CSGO, now CS2. I know nothing about CSGO either, man. That was just like a little too old for that, so we'll get into that. Built and led a Web3 launchpad consultancy for almost 2 years, raised over 7 figures of funding for 10 plus projects in the Web3 space from brilliant LPs. Also loves gaming, obviously. He built an esports league, investing in fitness. But my favorite part about Ruben, dude loves anime. Insanely hyped about anime. He described it as 10 to 15 series at one given time. And then as we were talking about it, he just ripped out hundreds of dollars worth of cards, probably thousands of dollars worth of cards from many different trading ecosystems very quickly. He had them at arm's length. How'd I do for you, man? Did I do a good description? Do you want anything else to add there?
No, that was awesome.
All right, fantastic. I'm glad it was awesome, but it's not going to be as awesome as this podcast that we're about to hit up with the world famous midlife crisis question. Ruben, how did you get to the seat that you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the audience that has not been here. Episode 1 is your childhood, and I'm really interested in, were you a tinkerer? Did you like to play sports? Did you have parental figures? Did you have family members that helped molded the way that you thought? Did you go through experiences that still you think about to this day that help create your behaviors and the way that you act? 2, your professional career, whether it was schooling, whether you went straight into entrepreneurship. And I'm really interested at this part is the mentors, the lessons learned, the failures, the things that also helped start mold that mindset and prep you for Web3, give you some skill sets to when you got into Web3. When was that? What did that look like? What was your journey in Web3 and what does the future look like? So episode 1, 2, and 3, cannot wait to go through this, man. Hit me with episode 1. Let's do it, brother.
Sure. So early on in my formative years, I was always a very competitive person. I was a small, skinny guy when I was a kid, but I was very driven. So I got into football early on. I think I was maybe 6, 7 years old.
Mhm.
So we call it football, you guys call it soccer.
Yep.
So I kind of poured all my time early on into football. I was one of those kids that would immediately, as dinner's done, I would get on my bike, cycle up to the field, or the what do you call the soccer field,
Mhm.
and play
The
football with
pitch,
who,
right? Isn't that what you
yeah,
call it? The
pitch, soccer
pitch?
pitch, yeah. Whoever was there, I'd play, or I'd play by myself. I'll um, refine my techniques. I had an incredible, um, what do you call it, like power in my right foot. I was only a right footer. I didn't do both legs.
Mm.
I wasn't
Mhm.
ambidextrous or anything.
Mhm.
So I only did right foot, but I was one of those kids that at a very early age could kick the ball from one side all the way over to the other side.
Was that just
Even,
natural, or did you just
yeah,
practice a lot? Just
I just
natural?
something of my body composition, like they were all amazed about it, because say that there's 20 odd kids or something like that that's playing the same team, and nobody had anything close to what I had. So it was something
Right.
about the way that I was able to do it. So it
I
came
think that's
natural to me.
I
Yeah.
think that's an important point. Sorry for jumping in though too, is
Yeah,
because
no.
I think people don't talk about this enough. Is like I always use this analogy, right? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is one of the best golfers that ever played.
Yeah.
Not only was he the hardest worker at the time, but I think he just had a natural knack for hitting a golf ball, right? So just
Mm,
like you said, I think there's a lot of instances, and people don't talk about this, is like, hey man, you just started kicking a ball on a pitch and you
yep.
could kick it very, very far. There was nothing that you did. There was not like this hard training to get to that part, but then you trained hard on top of it, which was probably a good recipe for being pretty good. Right?
Yeah. And
Wrong?
no, no, it's definitely right. There's a mix of talent, like innate talent, and being driven, being able to work hard. And what we back in the day, we didn't even have a name for it, but now we call it delayed gratification,
Hmm.
because now we have the instant gratification.
Right.
Um, and it was more of a just learning early on that you needed to work hard at something and see the progress, which is
Mm.
definitely something that I learned in a very young age,
Yeah.
by just doing it and seeing the results that I was given,
Right.
which put me in a position where there's even a film from when I was maybe like 10, 11 years old, where I kicked, um, what is it called? It's like a penalty kick,
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
midfield, of the smaller ones, because you go from the 7 people teams to the 11 people teams. But I was
Hmm.
very young, and I kicked it all the way from midfield and into the top right corner of the goal, and people were screaming and cheering and couldn't believe their eyes,
Yeah.
because at this age, this is not normal, right? To be able to do these things.
Right.
So I wanted to pursue that professionally as well. It was basically what I lived for, in my very young age, but I got injured, very injured,
Hmm.
which is usually the thing that
Yeah.
happens to up and coming, young footballers, is injury. And it was, the irony of it is, what it was a week before I was supposed to go on to like a national circuit.
Hmm.
Um, and I never got to do that. So I ended up in
Right.
crutches for about 3 months. I almost
Ah.
tore all the tendons in my leg, and my wrist.
Did you just
Um,
get slid into, or how'd that happen?
well, it was actually a teammate of mine that didn't quite understand that the things that the coaches were saying about, going in. If there's a thing in football, if the person who goes in the hardest into a confrontation is the
Hmm.
person who's going to kick through the wall, and then the other person's going to get hurt. So you
Right.
need to make sure that if you're committing, like if you're going into a confrontation, then commit to it and fully commit to it and kick through it, or else you're going to get hurt,
Right.
right? And then somebody misunderstood that on my team, and I was doing, what we call, an outside bend. I don't know if the translation works, but you kick the ball with the outside of your wrist
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give it a spin around the person, and then you run on the other side,
Right.
right? So I was supposed to do that, and then that person absolutely kicked with all his might into the ball, which is not something that you do on a when you're having a training match with your teammates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my wrist is like, your wrists go to here, right?
Yeah.
but mine went all the way like this, and I stepped on
Oh,
my own wrist. So
yeah. That was that, huh?
so yeah, that was that. And then which again, not necessarily a negative, because this after that, the entire football team actually disbanded not too long after that, some circumstances and etc. But that brought me into gaming, because people
Mm.
needed to shift their interests into other things,
Yeah.
and then they shifted that into Counter-Strike 1.6.
Okay.
So this is around me being 14 years old.
Yeah.
Um, so I got my own gaming computer at that time and started playing Counter-Strike, and I did the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just got
Mm-hmm.
completely sucked into it, to the point where I wanted to be a professional at that as well. I have a bunch of people I know from my childhood that went either semi-professional or fully professional, was traveling around internationally.
Right.
Some of them people I played with as well.
Yeah.
I unfortunately had the didn't have that experience. My computer got locked into a cupboard at one point, and so my grades were just going downhill. I was
Oh yeah.
playing games from I came home until early in the morning, only sleeping about 4 hours a night,
Yeah.
not focusing on school. Because that time it was nothing such really as a professional career in gaming.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what it is now, right? Multi-billion-dollar industry.
Not at all. So I was at the forefront of that, and I saw where it was going, which also leads me into eventually conversations about emerging markets and stuff like that. That I've always been uh, at some point involved in an emerging market
Yeah.
in some shape or form.
Right. Right. And so uh did the gaming kind of lead you up to through high school and then go like college era? All right.
Yeah,
So
then I started working out as well, because I've always had a thing for physical activity.
yeah.
So my physical activity got put to the side,
Right.
but then I wasn't able to do anything because you're not allowed to start working out at that time. I believe you weren't allowed to start getting gym memberships until a
Right.
certain age, because they didn't
Right.
want people that weren't developed to
Right.
actually
Right.
start working out.
Right. So
Um, yeah.
go, go ahead. Did you had something else to say?
No, that started my bodybuilding career.
Yeah, man, you are all right. So we're already like building companies, talking emerging markets, but bodybuilding career. You already gave me a wealth of information, and
Hmm.
I've got so many questions. I don't even know where to go, but there's a couple ones that I immediately have to touch on,
Hmm.
and it's this. You said some really interesting things in the sense of you use the word delayed gratification when talking about pretty young part of your life, right?
Hmm.
And you have this mindset that you just go 1,000% into something.
Yeah.
To me, that has to come from somewhere, whether it be completely, like you said, innate, and it's just your mindset, or can you talk to me about where you think that came from? Now reflecting back, right? Because what was interesting to me when you were talking about this is almost like you were a little self-aware when you were that young, or is this
Mm.
more self-reflecting back? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Um, it's a very good question. Try and understand where it came from.
Mhm.
Um, I
And if you
think it
don't have an
is
answer, it's all right.
no, I think it is a like people are born with qualities, right? There's
Yes.
certain things that you cannot really put a finger on, but it's just
Right.
a part of you, who you are as a human being.
Right.
And I've always been very explorative, right?
Mm.
So I don't like people telling me, "Oh, you can't go and do this." I'm like, "Okay, you can't go and do this, but I can." Right? So which means that I'll figure out a way to go do the thing. And I just have that persistence that
Yeah.
I don't lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So it is
I yeah.
it's a competitive, you know? I think it could just be competitive, right?
It probably is. It probably started out as competitiveness, right?
Right.
I wanted to be the best.
Yeah.
I put in the hours. I saw the gap. I saw that people weren't. I'm like, why don't you guys spend all this time doing this? If you want to get better at it, then you need to
Right.
focus. You need to do
Right.
the thing. Can't get
Yeah.
better at the thing if you don't do the thing.
Right. Right.
And then that turned into seeing the results, right?
Mm,
Seeing how I was improving more than other people were improving. And what
right.
I did was just I put more time into it, but it was something that I love doing, right? So I've always viewed it as the things that I put my like the a whole essence of my being into are things that I enjoy at a hobby basis, right? I enjoy
Ooh.
it as a part of
Mhm.
um, the things that gives me pleasure in life, right?
Right, right.
So it needs to come from a place like that, right? But
Yeah.
also it is, of course, other people acknowledging it, right? The
Mm,
acknowledgement of succeeding
yeah,
from your peers,
right,
right?
right.
Um, that of course feels amazing. It does
Yeah,
for every single human being. It's a part of the framework that keeps us outside of a burnout environment. Is
right,
literally that. Is make
right,
sure that you appreciate the people around you, the things that they do. There's tons of research around this, and
right,
I didn't know that at a time that that was an actual thing,
right,
but I've learned that in a later age. So I just by happenstance ended up in that position, and it was very fruitful for me because I was
right.
getting the things that I didn't even know that I necessarily needed to continue doing the thing that I was doing,
Yeah.
but I did. So
No, that's already like again, just like so many insights. You talked about burnout. I actually had a doctor on the show, one of the co-founders of Rough Riders, and we went through the medical diagnosis of burnout because
oh,
it is
I was
first.
clinically burnt out at 23.
We're
So
gonna talk about that. I can't wait to can't wait to get into that. But here's something that you said that I think is fundamentally important for entrepreneurs, people like us
mm,
that are builders and creators, is you genuinely have to enjoy what you do. Do you think if you did not, you would be as successful as you are currently today if the things that you picked weren't like a pure passion of yours? I'm interested in that topic.
no, I
Right,
wouldn't.
right.
Because I pursued early on, and now we're jumping a little bit now from
Totally cool.
uh,
Totally cool.
yeah up to college. So firstly, I was in the military as National Guard.
Right,
That I actually loved a lot.
right.
I wanted to be a professional inside of the army for a while as well, but I got told by my family that that's not going to happen. So I'm like, okay, actually, the points that you're making make sense. I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to head to college. So I headed to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up doing an auditing degree, or I did 2/3 of an auditing bachelor.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely fucking hated it
Right.
because it wasn't. I'm not built in that way. Sitting down, looking at budgets and doing like tax law and stuff like that.
Oh, that
It's
sounds
yeah,
miserable.
it's excruciating to me. But I love the people, so I stayed for the people because I got to know a lot of great people around that
Yeah,
time. Some of them are still like very close
right.
from college. Jumped off college actually. So that was a very big thing for me, like a
Yeah,
big negative, because it's the
yeah,
first time in my life that I've ever given up on anything.
yeah. And
Because I
and
hadn't up until that point. So
talk to me about that at that moment in time.
mm,
Was it a lot of negative self-talk in the sense that you felt like you failed for something at the first time, or are you self-aware enough to realize at that
it was
time,
more a
"I hated it"?
self-realization
Yeah,
practice where I
yeah.
go, oh, this is not me. So I'm not doing this
Mm,
for me. I'm not doing this for passion. I'm doing this
mhm.
because it's safe, secure, was a good idea that came from somewhere else.
Right,
From because of the justifications are as long as there's money moving, there's always going to need an auditor. There's always going to need somebody in economics.
right,
As long as there's cash moving, which is going to be forever, right? So
right,
it's like, oh, this is secure at least,
right.
right? And it's a respectable field as well.
Yeah,
So I jumped off of it. And at the same time, I was working in the nightlife. So I was in the nightlife for about 8 years. By the way, I had a job since I was 16. I've never not had a job.
mhm.
So I've always been
Same.
kind of building for myself and always been career oriented. Like start as soon as you can, start building something as soon as you can, at least get some experience, some understanding of how it all works.
Right.
Um, and I jumped into the nightline fully at that point, where I did actually go into something that I very much enjoyed, which is beer.
Ah,
So,
love beer. I used to brew my own beer.
oh, I was working at a craft brew bar.
I live in San Diego, which has like the most craft breweries in the country.
We had some amazing. Is Stone Brewery out there? No, it's the West
Oh
Coast
yeah, I
Brewery.
live like 10 minutes from Stone.
Oh, dude, man. Like
Yeah,
we had 16 drafts and over 170 different bottles.
nice, nice.
So I went full on into the beer. And I'm, well, at least a self-acclaimed amazing salesman if it's something that I'm passionate about. So I could talk for hours to customers about beer, and that's what they enjoyed about the place as well. Is that we literally just have a hang. So
Yeah,
they'll sit in
yeah,
the bar, we'll have a hang. I'll say, okay, what do you like? Like, this is the story behind this beer. This is a story behind this beer. We had
yeah.
a beer at 41% at one point. We had a
End of the
32%
world
one.
from
It's
Brewdog.
crazy. Yes, Tactical Nuclear Penguin and Sink the Bismarck. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I know Brewdog very well. I've
Yeah,
had the DGen Distillery guys on our show who are backed by
that's
Brewdog.
cool.
Yeah,
That's cool. It's an amazing brewery. The Punk
amazing.
IPA is a legendary IPA.
I'm
Um,
gonna talk a little smack. The craft breweries just aren't good in the rest of the world compared to what's here in America. We
uh,
did coin the craft breweries, but they've caught
well,
up. They've caught up. Listen,
have you heard about Nugnø?
yes, amazing brewery.
Nugnø is about a half an hour from the city that I lived in. They
They're
were a large part.
fantastic.
Yes,
Yeah,
they're a large part of why it became successful in the southern part of Norway, and then filtered out to the rest of Norway. The craft
yep,
brewing scene, from my experience and from my POV, literally started in the around the city that I was doing it in. So I think we were one
right,
of the first
right,
ones who was actually doing it in Norway.
right, right.
We also have Stavanger, which was doing a Cardinal, which has a Bible and everything. Those guys are amazing, like a beer Bible. So
Yeah,
it's like this thick book of
yeah,
like
yeah,
800 beers or something
yeah,
that they have on house. So I did that for a while, and again, comes back to passion. So I
yeah,
did that for passion. I did that really well. I built myself up through the ranks from like basically a bar back in nightlife to part-time bar manager. I couldn't take it full on because I was again in college.
yeah, yeah.
And to make that all fit in together, I eventually found out through a friend that I was living with actually that there was a degree in the city that was in interactive game design in a private
Ooh,
school. And
ooh,
I had no idea about this. And it was maybe 5-minute walk from my house. And I had no clue. And I
awesome.
was playing games every single day. We were playing Xbox. We were playing um, on our computers. Like, we were
Were you
playing
still
various.
just playing CS:GO at this time, or were you playing anything?
I actually picked up CS:GO at that time again, but I was playing a lot of like World of Warcraft,
Mhm.
a lot of MOBAs, Heroes of New Earth. Like, people who are OG would know what that is. It's not League, it's not Dota, it's something in between, and the OGs know what it is.
Yeah,
I was playing so many games, man. Like, there's almost nothing that I haven't touched when it comes to the gaming world, at least
that's
in the
amazing.
main titles. Diablo 3, of course, used to be a big Diablo 2 fan when I was a kid.
Oh man, that's how my whole journey started. We were streaming Diablo 3 and Elder Scrolls Online, and now I'm here on a podcast talking to
There
beautiful
you go.
humans like you.
There you go.
It's a
They're
wild journey,
amazing
man.
gateways into this digital sphere. Amazing
Yeah,
communities behind it as well. Amazing people behind it.
100%.
Um, but so yeah, I learned about this college that was doing a private college that was doing a degree in interactive game design. I'm like, damn, that's like exactly what I need to do. Like, that's
Right.
exactly what I want to do. I applied for the private school, got in very quickly because they understood my passion. They actually had a process where you
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
speak to them before you got admitted.
Yeah.
Um, Started that journey there, and that was like my very first step into, okay, this can be a professional career, like
Right.
working in the digital space and moving myself from more traditional thought processes and into this environment. um, I ended up going ham again. So I was the student body president. At one point, I was also the president for, um, well, this is the student body. I was the student body president for a while, but I also was for the board, the student board. So I was the president for the student board. Then I handed off the student body to the second runner up we worked very well together. So handed that off to her. She did a fucking amazing job with that. I ended up working for the school at one
Nice.
because they needed my feedback, and I was helping being a bridge between the students and the private school. I influenced it to the point where they rebuilt parts of the campus for us. And I did that for 3 years, but unfortunately got absolutely no gratitude for it. They took it, they handed it off upwards in the system, and somebody else got a good new cushy job, and I didn't even get a thank you for spending 3
You
years
brought that
doing
up
this.
earlier, man.
And that's when my burnout happened.
Yeah. So, all right, before we get there, well, we're already gone through a magical journey. And I think there's a couple things. I think people are really going to benefit from your mindset of the entrepreneurship and the Web3 stuff. But we already could talk for like 6 hours because I could just rewind and go through like year by year. Here's the thing that's interesting to me, and we're about to talk about burnout, but before we get there, you keep on talking about how you have to enjoy something. And I went through this personal experience myself. Like, I went to design school. I love being creative. But when it became my day job, I got burnt out from it. Now, I don't know if it was the content that I was designing. What I'm getting at is I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot that people actually do tackle their passions, but then it becomes like repetitive and boring to them.
Yes.
So what is the solution, or what are your thoughts there as to why that might even happen?
Well, the difference is that you create mundane processes around the thing that you love, that is like vibrant and filled with fantasy and fluid, and there's new impressions all the time. There's creative things happening where you're able to explore, and then you put it into a box.
Yes.
That's what you do, right? You create that box around it that has stringent processes. There's now suddenly contracts where you're not able to explore the way that you want potentially with the customers. There's now the financials around it. There's the reporting around it. There's the legal around it. And what you came in for was doing the thing that you were passionate about, not all of these other things, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you operate from a place where you're singular, if it's a solo venture, or if it's a small firm, you'll have to deal with things that you don't necessarily want to deal with.
Right.
But if you're in a larger firm, or if you're leading a company where you can move the processes that you don't want out to people who are experts in those things, and that's why they're there, that's maybe potentially a better environment for it. Like if you really want to singularly focus on the thing that you were passionate about, right? Which might have been like the creative process around creative design. Right. And that's why I think a lot of people, we got a role that's called like a chief visionary officer, for example, was something that didn't exist, and then it came into play. I think that is because there's people who are uniquely equipped to do these things, but you cannot ask them for legal advice. Like, what should we do? Where should we set up this company? What jurisdiction should we be in? How do we look at the financials? What are FTEs that we currently need to hire? How does our organizational chart look right now? What is the profitability outlooks for this company? Are we meeting the correct KPIs that we are currently setting for ourselves in terms of customer outreach? These are not the things that they want to deal with. They want to deal with the vision that they had, and have the conversations with the people that they want to involve into this vision that they think are key components to getting to where you need to go. Right. So this is a very specific thing that I mentioned, of course, but at least within this framework of thought, I think that at least for me makes sense.
So what you said was incredibly beautiful, man, because I have managed big teams in the past, right? And creative people do not want to be told what to do, and they need to feel like they have the ecosystem or the time to be creative. So what you said makes total sense, right? Like the biggest thing that I always dealt with this crew of people was time. For some odd reason, and I don't know why, most of the people that I dealt with that are creative, they don't want to come to work till like 10, 11 a.m. Like they were night thinkers. That's when they were creative. But when you're in a corporate environment and they come in at 10 or 11 a.m. or whenever the hell they want to, that just doesn't work. And the biggest pain point that I had, and then why I ended up leaving and stop managing the creative department, is because I had to put structure around something that needed. I actually went to a seminar once, and I think the best way to describe it was controlled chaos, right? Like, like there's a way, if you look at a creative's desk compared to like, let's say an actuary, right? Most actuaries' desks, their pencils, their everything is going to be in a place.
Yeah.
You can look at a creative's desk. To you, it looks like an absolute fucking hurricane, but to them, it makes sense, right? And so I think it's just another my version of saying what you're saying. What are your thoughts there?
I agree. Which is the funny part is that I'm somewhere in between this, right?
Right.
That's the one thing that I found that I really enjoyed and that I was really good at when doing what would call like an arts degree, right? An interaction gaming. Is that I was very proficient in being the middle ground for creative people, having them do what they need to do, but also at the same time talking to the developers that need to develop the thing that they are concepting and creating. Which would be funnily enough, because I think my desk is also somewhere in between. It's organized and messy at the same time. There's a lot of things here, but it's still sort of organized. Right. So I think I've always been in between those things. I'm also a nighttime person. A lot of the things that I've done need a lot of creativity, because I'm a problem fixer.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do a good problem fixer, you need to think outside the box. You need to see the dots and connect them in ways that people might not be able to do themselves, to help the process further.
Right.
So I do resonate with that. Absolutely.
I think it's a beautiful thought, and it makes sense to me. And I hope somebody that might be struggling with that hears this and it starts making sense to them. You just brought up something really important, I think, is you're a problem fixer. And I am, randomly enough, I fell in the same way too. I struggled. I went to one of the best design schools in the country, and I struggled because there are a lot of uber creative people. And I was like, I was not that, like, I was not so much in that mentality.
Same. You're not eccentric.
I also hated just looking at Excel sheets all day, like you said, too.
Yes.
But I was very good. I'm very good at explaining why creatives think the way they do to a person that doesn't understand creative processes, right? So that in between, right? Like you said, talking to developers or talking to just marketing people in general, right? Like being that in between. And that's why I ended up actually head of brand and stopped just being a designer, right? Because there was a little bit more process and business side to it, but it also allowed for me to continue with my creative juices. One thing you said, though, is analytical thinking, problem solving, linking things that most people don't see. I'm really interested in what processes work for you, because I think it's a little bit different. I went to, I don't know if you've heard of design thinking, but it's a thought that came out of the school of Stanford, right?
Of course.
In a typical Silicon Valley fashion, I worked for a startup in downtown San Francisco. They fired the CMO, the chief marketing officer, hired a CDO, a chief design officer, to run marketing because they thought they could design think their way through marketing. And that was a massive failure because it's just a different skill set, right? But that opened up my eyes to like, oh, there's actually real thought behind like linking up systems and doing appropriate research and customer interviews to try to find the problem. I'm interested in some of the skills that you use or methods that you use to start tackling these big problems, because I think it's important for people to understand that it's just not magic, right? There are processes that go into it.
Yeah. I want to touch on a point before that as well, when it comes to creativity, because I think that that will help people. Because I like the point you said, maybe if somebody's listening to this, it might help them put things
Mm-hmm.
more into a system where they understand that, oh, I'm not necessarily wrong.
Right.
I don't know if this has been coined or said before, but the way that I probably view it is, um, there's eccentric and abstract creativity, and then there's
Yes.
logical creativity.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me because I'm more of a logically creative driven person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as good at with abstract things, which it sounded like you were as well. Like you're good at being creative and creating solutions, but
Yeah.
necessarily if somebody said to you paint a Picasso picture, right? Like it wouldn't, getting to that point wouldn't make any sense to you. Like how would I even get there? While other
Right.
people have like lucid moments where they go, okay, this is what I want to create,
Right.
and they just do it. And for that, I've
Mm-hmm.
always been a bit envious of that, to be very
Yeah, me
honest,
too.
because I've seen creatives, yeah, a lot of creatives up front, and they just create these amazing things, and I don't understand where they're channeling it from.
Right.
But at the same time, resolving problems and getting to a point of resolution for an issue, it demands some form of creativity to get there, because if not, the issue would have been resolved already, right?
100%, 100%. And I don't think people even understand that concept a lot, you know?
Often
Th
not. And
Yeah,
it's a process.
yeah,
It's a process of allowing people um, to intake a lot of information and compute it internally. And some people are better at seeing, almost taking components from other experiences in life that can be diagonally kind of, or like they could be mirrored rather to the thing, that they
mhm,
have some of the same components, or they have some of the same attributes as the thing that you're looking at, and see, are these transferable?
yeah,
Are these attributes transferable across fields? Well,
yeah,
I think they are. Well, if they are, then my assumption is that the reaction from the audience or whoever I'm going to talk to about this will have, if I explain it the correct way, they will have an understanding of this is a factual thing in real life that has happened, or a way
right,
to do things. I want to take some of the attributes of that's successful, and I move it in here. And the reason
yeah,
why it fits is because X, Y, and Z. And
mhm,
then they go, aha, okay, well that makes sense, because this is the process and the result of this thing. Well, then this logically will make sense on the other end for me as well. Like I can understand it now, like the way
right,
that you view.
right, right,
And then speeding that process up in the terms of just doing it instead of explaining it, in a sense, right? And then that's not always easy,
right,
because communication, like you get, and this is a part of maybe where we go into how people who do these things are, um, sometimes misunderstood in the things that they're doing, because it's
yeah,
communication is such a huge part of it, right? Of getting,
huge,
and you're living your life, right? You're the protagonist of your story,
right,
and you, at least if you're like me, um, I sort of expect everybody else to be at my level, if you know what I mean, or to
yes,
the level of thinking. And that isn't always the case, because we're so incredibly different as people. And this is not me trying to say that I'm here and somebody else is here, but it is, we're just so different.
right,
Um, that sometimes like over communication is something that I'm working on,
mhm,
trying to be better at over communicating my processes and the way that I do things.
yeah,
Um, because I've never really looked at myself as like better than anybody. So
right,
that means innately that I see myself at the same level as everybody else, right?
right.
And then if you draw a line there, then you say, okay, well then I believe that everybody should also understand the things that I'm doing and why I'm doing
Right,
it.
right. Which
and
which which if you have that mindset can come off as you're higher than other people because, like, if you just
or just they don't understand what you're doing, so they go, well, this doesn't work, like you can't do this, and this is never going to work.
Right,
And
right,
then
right.
always what happens, and this is not even this is factually true throughout my entire life,
Right.
is within a few, like 3 to 6 to 12 months after the fact, when I've been told it's not gonna, we can't do it this way, I don't understand it, we're not gonna do it, I was right. I was
Yes.
100% right. And they come back to me and say, you were right. Or somebody within the organization come back and say, by the way, you know the thing that you said we were gonna do? We're doing it. Like this was like, back in all the previous jobs, even when I was in my 20s, right? This has happened to me.
That
Um,
and do you think that boils down to, again, communication, like you said, or what, or that
yeah,
are you have you been so forward thinking at those moments that it's just no matter how much you're gonna communicate, they're just not gonna understand it?
also true.
Right.
Also true. Because it's a perspective thing that you might have a unique perspective on things. Um, and then maybe we don't allow that too much, right? Maybe we don't allow people to have unique perspectives because that makes me feel some sort of way, right? It
I
makes me
love it.
feel, yeah, less than. Or and I've
Yep.
never operated in a way like that. Like I've
Yeah.
worked with tons of people who are way smarter than myself, like way
Right.
way smarter than myself. um but I guess I've never really felt threatened. You
That's
know what I
good
mean?
too. Yeah, yeah. And you said so much stuff there. So one of the things I wanna talk about first is you were describing the creative process and you taking experiences from things that are parallel, tangential, like might not even fit. Perfect example. Design One of the design thinking processes is experiences, right? And
Hmm.
uh it's a form of qualitative research, right? Like if
Yeah.
you are going to create a video game eventing company, you
Hmm.
damn straight better go to video game events. But
Mm.
not only that, you should be going to different events to see how people interact, what
Yeah,
processes they have, which
exactly.
interactions, right? And so I was working for a solar company at the time, and we had a what we call a roadshow display in Costco, right? And one
Hmm.
of the most interesting insights I got was going to a Best Buy electronics store here in the States and seeing how they set their displays up, because it was still the same environment as your, customer walking around trying to get their attention. And one of
Hmm.
the insights that I got as a company Bose, they had a demo display, right? And if you press the button, it would play the music on the Bose system.
Mm.
Well, well, I was the engineers, the salespeople, the marketing people within the Ternley company, they told Best Buy, please turn the volume up uncomfortably loud. And so when they pressed the button, the customer would panic because it was way too loud, right? But
Hmm.
guess what that was? That was an easy way for the guys that were selling on the floor to come over to the customer and start a conversation. That was
Yeah.
actually engineered, right? And no one would
Mm.
ever think about that. And so, like, getting these insights of like, okay, so how can you pull the customer in without them even knowing that this tactic was to start a
Mm.
conversation, right? And so that's an example of tangential, or a tangent or a diagonal, a direct example. My question to you is, that insight to me comes from just experiences, right? Like, how
It
important are
does.
experiences in life to start this kind of creative process and thinking? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's two part in the sense of what type of experiences.
Right.
Because I think it's instrumental. Um, well, one of them is kind of you can't control it, which is
Yeah,
not really
I'd agree.
fair, and you can't really change anything about it. But it's a
Right.
part of like your life, your
Hmm.
growing up, the way that you choose to do certain things, the way that you develop as a human being,
Hmm.
what you accept and what you don't accept.
Hmm.
Um, the I guess the one time that you're here, how you want that to unfold. If
Right.
you want to maximize it or you just want to coast by,
Yeah.
right? I think it sits very deep. Like
Yeah.
I've always known that I'm meant for something great, and it sounds
Right.
horrible. It sounds terrible when I say it like this,
No, that does
but
not sound
it's
terrible.
it's one of those things where I think you either have it innately in you, or you don't. Like that's at least what I've been reasoned myself to, because it
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't make any sense, right?
Hmm.
The amount of persistence that I have, I see people falling off left and right, and I've done that in my entire life, and I'm still here, and I'm kind of solo. Like I'm not solo, but it's sort of a lonely way of doing things, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Because everybody else figures that they fell into this like standardized boxes that we've created in society, and then there are some other people who just go like, no, that's not for me.
yeah,
And it might be a more lonely journey, and a lot of people have touched on this specific topic when it comes to entrepreneurship and trying to do something great, that it's an incredibly lonely and arduous experience.
right,
But at the same time, I wouldn't have it any other way. Right? Like
right,
this is the stuff that I want to do.
right,
So I have to take the good with the bad.
right.
But to your point, I think also being active is the biggest differentiator that I've seen, because I was building my own company, just like singularly solo journey, solo venture, um, during COVID as well. And I
Yeah,
saw how much of an impact just going out, meeting other people,
yes.
impacted the creative processes within my own company,
Mhm,
within myself, the
mhm.
amount of opportunities that I was getting. It's like saying, like, the world is full of opportunity, but I'm not going to engage with it.
Right, right.
That's literally it. It's that clear cut. It's not that difficult.
Yeah,
So from me, going out to conferences, going out meeting people, and people, they tend to put these in these boxes that I don't like. It's like, oh, you're going to a BD event, you're just going to go do BDing, and the BDing is just like a higher order of salesperson, and they're taking away all of the important things. Like, I'm not necessarily going as a business developer, I'm going as an entrepreneur. I'm
yeah,
looking for partnerships, I'm looking for potential people that I want to advise. Even I'm like just
yeah,
looking and see, okay, are there any cool companies here that needs some help,
yeah.
right? So they tend to take away, and it ends up just being all of these BD guys and founders go, or some founders going there, but all the other people should be there as well. To be very honest,
Wow,
like in my opinion, like the
absolutely.
marketing people should be there. They should see, okay, how are people marketing themselves? What are creative ways that are products are being built inside of the space right now? Are there anything to inspire me to do something different? Am I seeing a pattern right now in the market by talking to all of these people about how they're exposing themselves to the market? What type of exposure do they do? How should we be doing it? Should we be doing different to them, or should we do more of what they're doing?
Right.
Right. So for me, it's just going out, being active
Yes,
around people is key, number one.
absolutely, man.
Mm.
And so all right, I wanna be cognizant of time. I know because we haven't even touched on Web3, but like I said, we could go for 6 hours, man. There's a couple things that I definitely don't wanna miss on, though. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll follow up on what you just said, too. The reason why I do what I do is exactly what you just said, experiences and connection, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced that one of my innate superpowers is making you feel that I genuinely care. But this isn't bullshit, right? Like, I really genuinely care about your story, and I just genuinely care about people.
Mm.
And I think that for me is what those experiences are about. And I also think if people just had a little bit of nudge on understanding that you're not there, to your point, to learn about business dev,
Mm.
which are really there is you're there to learn about people and meet new people. Because at the end of the day, if it's business dev people, there's somebody behind that strategy, and that thought came from a place. And I think uncovering why that thought came from what place and how they got to that is way more important than understanding business dev. Because I could go on a YouTube and understand the fundamentals of business dev, but I think the
Mm.
magic happens in somebody's brain, and someone as a person, in the way that they have been molded and shaped. Does that make sense at all? Um,
It definitely does. And if you don't do these things, you won't have those impressions, right?
right.
Those things will not be imprinted on you.
Yeah.
So you might have fucking 75% of your puzzle puzzled out. But there's
Yes.
25% by just sitting behind a computer, you won't be able to find those pieces because
R
they're not from your perspective.
right.
Those pieces that you're missing are not going to be from you. They're
Yeah.
going to be from somebody else who has an entirely different life experience that's going to unlock those pieces for you.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you just have to. You have to
100
go out.
100%,
And
man.
this digital age has done us a service and a disservice by this, right?
Yep. Yep.
Where people don't go out and have to engage as much as they used to do. And we don't find it necessarily, when we have a conversation about it, it's not talking about how productive it is. It's talking about, okay, are we wasting money as a company now by sending these people to this event because we can't KPI exactly what they got out of it? Like the written report wasn't good enough. I feel like you
Right.
wasted time. So you
Right.
missed the point.
Yeah.
Either you have the wrong person and the person never intended to do anything useful,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just not getting it because it's not for you to get. Like if you hire creative people, or if you hire other people than yourself, then you're hiring somebody who has another perspective, who's supposed to do a job that you trust. Give them
Yeah.
autonomy. Let them
Yeah.
fucking do their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't, then it's basically just yourself marionetting the entire operation against other people's will, and that
Yeah.
becomes very toxic very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Another angle to that is one of the most frustrating things to me, and currently that I think about a lot, is the job hiring process, right? Because
Mm,
they have like a list of requirements, and I'm like, you guys are missing on so much amazing talent. Because
mm,
to again, right, there's like tangential or parallel industries that these people could be amazing at, right? And they're just the mindset of like, you need to find the right people. Like if there is a skill set, which by the way, most of this shit's going to be taken away from AI, right? Now my
mm,
point's even more poignant, is because it really does then boil down to the people, because most mundane skill sets will be able to automatically be done. So
mm,
it's what is your brain? How do you process this information? And I always say this: the joke's actually on the guest on my show, because
mm.
I get to learn and go to school every time some beautiful human like you comes on. Like, I just learned something new. You've already said so many things that have made me already think differently, and I will reference this conversation in the future. So that's my selfish way of saying thank you very much
No, I'm
already.
happy to. Absolutely happy to. And this is what I do as well. Is I'm always looking for somebody who is more capable, smarter, has a different way of viewing things, to
Yeah.
have a conversation and to understand how they arrived at the points that they arrived at, because it has been instrumental in my life as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
I wasn't like, I don't think that anybody, well, a very core thing, but nobody's perfect, right? So,
No.
but
No.
in the attempt or the seeking for perfection, it's very obvious that not all of that can come from yourself.
No.
It's
No.
not possible.
No.
There's too many variables,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So if you
Hmm.
look at the breadth of variables, and if you could draw this out to like statistical analysis of how how many things you need to look at, how many data points there are in the world, and how to imagine how many data points is in your life. Like, what I
Yeah.
decided to do this instead of this. Now
Yes.
this would have been in a separate tree, and then
Yeah.
this would be a separate tree,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So somebody else might have done the things that you didn't do, and then that learning was given to them, and by through conversation, through meeting these people, you
Yeah.
can get some of that stuff that
Yeah.
you weren't able to because you chose to go the way that you did.
A
And then you can either
100%.
confirm or deny. Like you can
Yeah.
go, okay, well, I still think that I'm right about the thing because I still believe in the way that I viewed it. Or you go, well, actually, the things that you said makes a lot of sense to me. I'm going to change the way that I view that because what you said makes much more sense. Right?
100%. And that comes from experiences and learning, bottom line, man.
Yep.
Um, okay, so before we get to kind of Web3, and then I want to touch on your kind of entrepreneurship venture world, which I think merges Web3 a little bit. Burnout, man. I can't not gloss over that subject,
Yeah.
especially when someone has an intimate personal experience with it, because I think it's actually one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs, Web3 people deal with, and they treat it as like it it's interesting to me, like with the social media and all the bullshit that's thrown at us.
Mm,
It's almost treated as a point of weakness, right? Like, oh, you need to grind all the time, and if you can't handle that, you're a failure. And it's like, no, 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 no. Life is about again, being human and not being a robot and trying to think you're superhuman 24/7. So take me
yeah.
through your burnout process, and what I'm interested in is, yeah, touch on how it happened, But what are your takeaways from that? And what are things that you look at to prevent that from happening in the future?
The thing people need to understand about burnout as well, is that it's not what you think it is.
Mm,
People say, I've worked a lot, I got burnout. No, no,
mhm.
you didn't. You're tired.
Yeah.
Burnout is a mental um, issue,
Bam.
and it comes from a very different place. Usually, it comes from um, not reaching or getting the gratification that you're supposed to get for doing something. So it means you're doing a good job. Nobody gives a shit, right? Nobody, only people only complain when you're doing a poor job, but they're not giving you um, the positive of it in terms
Yeah.
of showing you gratitude when you're doing a good job, or um, cheering you on,
Yeah.
right? And it actually happened around the time where things that I was talking about my college, because it has been 3 years worth of work that I didn't really have time for, but I felt responsible because nobody else could take up the responsibility.
Mhm.
It was to the point, bro. Got the like the I don't know what you call it. There's like a wellness organization in the southern west of Norway that
Right.
tends to all of the colleges and make sure that they have like everything from like psychologists to medical to all of this and all the other offerings that you need for the students to be like taken care of.
Yeah.
I got them to rewrite their entire bylaws just so that our college could also be a part of it. Right. So I
Wow.
was really going to town. I was on three different boards at the time. I was a part-time bar manager. I was working out 7 days a week. I had a girlfriend and I had friends and everything else. So it was just way too much. And I knew that it was, but a human being is capable of continuing if the gratification is there, if the gratitude, I mean, rather, is there for the things that are being done, so it feels meaningful. But when you reach the point where somebody snags that off the table from you, steals it, whatever that they do, like the way that happened
Yeah.
to me, it kind of comes crashing down because it's also a realization of how people can be, which
Yeah.
you don't necessarily um, wasn't a part of your world picture, wasn't a part of the
Mhm.
way that you view that the world should be.
Mhm.
So for me, I actually went 9 months with I don't know if you've drank like a can of coffee and you get this like buzzy feeling, like
Yeah.
you feel uneasy, and it's
Mhm.
just everything is buzzing, everything is a bit unclear. You feel a little bit outside of yourself, so you almost get this
Mhm.
outside of body experience. I was like that from I get up in the morning until I went to bed for 9 months straight. So I thought that I was gonna be mentally sick or something rest of my life. Like I was pretty sure like I fucked my own brain up basically. I did too
Mhm.
much. I thought that I could do too many things. I put too much in there. I put too much strain on myself, and now I've just ruined it basically. So which
Wow.
was terrifying.
Yeah.
So I went and got clinically diagnosed for it and everything, and was more or less told that we can't guarantee you that you'll get out of this. I have patients that have been like this for or been outside of normal society for 25, 30 years. Like they
Yeah.
never reintegrated into society after something
Right.
like
Right.
this. When they hit the wall, they hit the wall and they never came back.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, thank you for at least being honest, but that's
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't see the end of it either. And then eventually around like 6, 7 months, it started maybe getting a bit better. And then it got actually gradually better. And then I got out of it.
Yeah.
So for me, there's just not an option for that to happen again.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it was because I let people take advantage of me.
Mm.
I I've been called naive all my life, but for me, it's a part of viewing the world in a way that I want it to be as well, and influence it in through towards that. Right.
Right.
Of course, I need to take guard myself from some of that. I don't like
Right.
people take advantage of me because I'm very capable. I'm very good at what I'm doing, and I have an incredible work ethic and all of those things, which allows people to take advantage of that very easily if I don't put up checks and
Mm.
balances.
Yeah.
Right. But I
Yeah.
also just love when I love doing something, I just can't see myself not doing it. Right. So I just love helping people.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
that sounds when people say, "Oh, I just love helping people," that it can sound like it's not true. Like it sounds like you're trying to portray something that you're not. But I've
Right.
done pro bono work. I've done a lot of this stuff. I worked with a hospital in Sierra Leone, did a lot of free work there. I was a part of setting up the initiative in Norway for sending out face masks to all the governmental for all the hospitals, for the people who needed to work close to people, all
Yeah.
done with 3D printing. I was a part of putting up that national thing with the post law, all of that. I've done all of that. And it is because there's one fundamental thing that I believe in, and it's very helpful for me at least, is I can't expect anybody else to do something that I wouldn't do. So if I don't want to go and
Mm,
help people, if I don't want to be a positive in somebody's day, in somebody's life, in for the rest of
love that.
the world, then how can I expect them to do that for me?
Yeah.
That logically doesn't track for me.
Yeah. No,
So
I absolutely love that, man.
mm,
So,
yeah,
dude, one, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, because like that I think what people don't understand is true burnout is a mental health situation, right?
yeah,
Um, and but what's interesting about yours is you have this high work ethic, and you hear most people interpret burnout as like physical
yeah.
exhaustion, right? And that can happen uh to some people, and that's just not the case, right? I have had founders on this show that have worked 20 hours a day for close to a year and have literally passed out on their on in their apartment, right?
Hmm.
Like felt like they were going to drop dead. uh that is that is just not getting enough sleep and not taking care of your body healthily, right? Like doing
At
health.
least from what I was explained as well, and from my experience, that is what it is. It's like
Yeah.
you're living a unhealthy lifestyle rather
Yeah.
than having mental, should say, um, concerns,
Right,
right?
right, right. So I'm so glad that you touched on this point, because I was going to go here if you didn't, and it's absolutely it's a mental thing. So what I'm interested in, because I went through a major depressive order myself in 2018. It's the most
Mm,
horrific thing I've ever went through to this day.
that's
I
terrible.
probably think I probably think about it once a day. And to your point, right? Like, holy shit, man, if I go back there, like, and then never be able to come back out, like, it's like beyond a terrifying thought, right?
Mm,
So what I'm interested in in your perspective is, what do you do to prevent that? I'm assuming it's some form of balance, but balance comes different from everybody. Like, and to your point, I just genuinely care about people, and I have the same
mm,
thing. Like, I want to do it because I'm assuming, not I'm not assuming, but I think people need to be able to see that action, and hopefully we'll replicate it in the future. I don't care if it comes back to me, but just like almost like um, teaching by doing mentality.
hmm.
But that hit my burnout as well too, with a plethora of other things. What is
Mm.
your advice from your perspective? Because there's no right or wrong answer here. What do you think about to make sure you don't go back to that place? That's interesting to me.
I think it's around know your own value, right?
Mm,
Be able to say no.
mhm, mhm,
Learn that saying no is not a bad thing.
mhm,
Saying no might be required.
mhm,
You don't need to be a part of absolutely everything that goes on around you at every given time and take every single opportunity.
mhm.
Um, because ultimately you might end up ending burning yourself out and then ruining everything,
Right,
right? So it's like you're playing a very risky game.
right.
And I was like that. I wanted to be a part of everything. I saw all the opportunities that were around me, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to amass all of these at once
Mhm.
because that's just going to be positive for my future, right? But then that also opened doors for me to be non-discriminatory towards who I was putting my time towards.
Mhm,
Was I checking that I was actually being valued?
mhm,
Was I making sure that I was being valued?
mhm.
Did I have any guarantees that this was going to play itself out positively for me?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, right? So this comes into the part of humans being humans, and there is always going to be somebody who wants to get the most out of the situation, even though
Right.
you feel like, okay, but it's fair is fair, so I'm going to be fairly given the things that I have been accruing or building towards. No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no.
Right.
If you give somebody else the legal framework and the opportunity to screw you over, be sure that they're going to do that in most
Yeah.
cases,
Yes.
especially
Yeah.
in business and when money is involved,
Yep.
right? Make sure
Yep.
that you take care of yourself and that you have all the security that you need around yourself, because then you can operate at max capacity with the comfort of knowing that I'm not going to get screwed.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely, man. And I think I don't think I need to say anything else than that. I think that's beautiful insight, and I think it comes many different forms and fashion from people. But that deeply, thank you for sharing that, man. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course.
I want to do a time check. We've been going for a little bit over an hour. Do you have a hard stop? I have one in
No,
40 minutes.
I've cleared my schedule to make sure that we got through this because I didn't know how long it was going to last. So yeah,
Awesome. So I only have about 40 minutes, and I want to make
sure.
sure we do venture capital and Web3. So
Hmm.
we just we kind of went on a circuitous path, but it was a beautiful one. We hit
Hmm.
things in episode 1 and episode 2. I want to give you the chance before we get into more Web3. Anything throughout this conversation that has sparked thoughts of things that you want to touch on before we get more into the you being a venture capitalist and starting your own companies and going through the Web3 stuff?
No, I think it's covered most of everything, and there's also a lot more. And I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things because I'm very heavily analytical as a person. So I'll
Yeah.
have something to say about everything. Right?
Right.
Like
Right.
no matter
Right.
what you send my way, I've probably had hours upon hours of thinking about the thing
Yep.
and why it is this way and why it's not a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the part of being the person that I said that I was, is I'm very explorative and I don't like other people telling me how things are. I need to figure it out myself, because if I don't
Yeah.
figure it out myself, I don't know the components of how it works. And if I don't know how the
Right.
components of work, it's not useful for me, because then I
Right.
cannot pull on the attributes and the qualities of the thing if I don't understand it. Right,
Right.
I can't use it. Right,
That's
and that's
interesting.
why I think I'm very good as a problem solver as well, is because I dig into the first principle thinking of why is it this way, how
Yeah.
did it start this way, how did it evolve,
Yeah.
and then I see the results, and then I can pull on those and see, okay, these things are similar enough, they're probably going to evolve in the same way.
Yeah.
If they're not, at least they're going to be similarities, so I can at least like not be completely shocked about how the things will go, and then
Absolutely.
influence that, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
No, and I love that we kind of end on that, is because you see why I do what I do now, right? Is
Yeah.
because how am I supposed to be able to understand what you're up to now if I don't understand the way you think? Like, I want to know that. I
Mm.
want to know why the way you think, why the way you work. And
Yeah.
you've already given us, even though I know we could talk for, well, we'll have to have multiple podcasts as a first of many, I'm sure.
Sure.
Uh, and we could talk for hours upon hours, but I got a pretty good understanding of who you are as a person, how you think. So
Mm.
knowing that our wide audience is Web3, but not only that, entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Let's go down that journey. So
Hmm.
either either touch on one of the companies that you started, learnings, winnings, failures, and some learning lessons there that you can share, uh, and then head into Web3. And I'm gonna kind of let you go whatever direction you want to go.
Sure. So my journey started um, because of a very private thing that happened. Um,
Hmm.
so about, yeah, 6 years ago,
Hmm.
I lost my little brother.
Oh
Um,
man, sorry.
yeah, which was the toughest thing that I've been through in my life,
Oh.
and will probably be the toughest thing that I'm ever going to go through.
Hmm.
I was sitting in Bali at the time, and I immediately came home. um, to be with my family.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that it did to me is that I went from this perspective of hardworking and real life is going to work itself out to there's not enough time.
Mm,
So there was an incredible perspective change that happened for me,
right.
where I went from like, oh, we're just going to try out things because we were building a company as a small team, but using Bali as the base,
Yeah.
and just living there doing that. And then I felt like, okay, I need to really go at this, not just like this was a cool thing that we did together as a friend group. I'm like, they need to take this seriously because
Mm-hmm.
there's not enough time.
Right.
And that prompted me to immediately start my own company.
Yeah.
I had been, for lack of a better word, what I felt like screwed out of all of the accolades that I should have gotten from things that I've done previously. So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to deal with having um, somebody over me. I'm going to have to
Right.
run this myself. Like I
Right.
cannot deal with it
Right.
because all the effort and all the energy that I put in, there's just no way for me to allow there to be a risk of somebody else just taking that from underneath me while I'm just focused
Interesting.
on doing a job.
So a
To be
co-founder
honest.
wasn't even thought, it was
No,
you.
no one. I wouldn't want anybody close to me because I didn't trust anyone.
Wow. Okay.
So, because literally my little brother killed
Yeah.
himself. Like, how
Wow.
can I trust anyone?
Wow.
Right?
Mm,
I'm just, there was no space for me to trust because that was the ultimate breach of trust. It's like,
right. Right.
there's no coming back from that. Like
Right.
anything else you can come back from, but this,
Yeah.
it's not possible.
Yeah.
Um, so I started my own company, um, also as a part of like a nod to my brother in the sense of like I'm gonna do something with my life. I'm not just gonna sit around here
Yeah.
and watch. Um, it was even called Little Brother Media. So
Ah.
LBM. So I taught myself how to do graphical design, website design.
Mhm.
I already had business development skills just innately, and from working in service industries for many years, like it was not a difficult thing for me to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I taught myself how to do all these things um, from scratch, from tutorials, and that's a nod to like why do we use these schools when we have tutorials? Because I learned more
Yeah.
that time about how I
Right.
actually do a job than those 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I got headhunted quite early in my journey into another startup in esports.
Okay.
So that was an esports platform that did competition handling, much like Faceit and ES Portal.
Mhm.
Um, had an amazing vision. Coincidentally, it was one of my high school friends who had started a company while I was away for about 8 years from the city that I'm in now. Um, and we just reconnected. It's like, oh, amazing! I've seen your work. Like, do you want to start working with us?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. Like, this sounds amazing. You guys have already built so much, and like, let me jump in and help you guys like scale this. Um, that was supposed to be a B2C company, but that's a monumental undertaking as a small team of 3 people,
Oh, yeah.
or 4 people actually. Um, and that needs a stupendous amount of funding. Faceit has spent like hundreds of millions in user acquisition and development and stuff like that to get to the place where they are.
Yeah.
So, but we thought that we would create the platform for the 99.5%, or it's actually more. It's like, yeah, probably less than 0.05% or something like that are professional players in Counter Strike, and are actually pursuing it in a way where it's like you're playing multiple hours a day. Like there's
Right.
so many people fell out of gaming. They just want to play with their friends every Thursday or Wednesday for a few hours in the evening after the kids have gone to bed. And everything is,
Yeah.
but there's no platform for them, right? So the thesis about the platform is absolutely correct, but it's just a massive undertaking. Eventually, we understood that there's nothing for us to do when we want to do some extracurricular activities for the company. Like we want to play games. Like that's what we do with our friends. Like we don't want to go bowling or fucking
Right.
kayaking or.
Right.
drinking every single time. Like sometimes maybe we just do it, or we drink and play games. Well, you know what I mean. And that ended up with maybe there's other people who actually also share this, and then started a small test we called the Consulting League, where you reached out to some of the consulting firms. They loved it. They got involved, and then we're just off to the races. It's like, yeah, this is definitely a thing because psychological health in the workplace is something that is huge,
Huge.
very important. And having grown up in the Gen Z digital age, right? We have so many people in decision-making positions now in companies who are previous ex-gamers.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to ex-professionals, like ex-professional gamers that are coming as like a senior management from a company,
Yeah.
right? So because you can extrapolate the values, right? He's extremely hardworking, extremely methodical, strategical. That's why he was able to become a professional player, right? And he applied that into business, right? So there's the qualities of gaming and the things that you need to be a good gamer, and to the things around gaming that people like that are very transferable into work life as well.
Yeah.
So that just grew very quickly, and became so that we used, at least we're looking at the metrics. It was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, corporate esports league in the world. For
Awesome.
CS specifically. I'm not going to claim for all of it. And we had companies like Accenture, Sogeti, Suprasteria, a lot of Norwegian state-owned companies, and like big energy companies, etc., involving themselves because they were able to now take people who are placed around the country in different departments that don't necessarily have the work colleagues that they'd love to have. They found each other inside of this because they were gamers. So they would tend to stay at home when social things were going on because they want to play with their friends. Now suddenly they have an actual tribe at the workplace. So it became incredibly important, and it's going on of like the fourth year right now, and it's just growing and growing still. Like now it's League as well, it's Rocket League as well. This chess where you have the guy who taught Magnus Carlsen. Basically, his grandmaster is the guy who was doing the commentating and streaming.
That's amazing.
Cool.
So it's still going on right now.
Oh yeah. It's growing, and
awesome.
They're getting more clients now. They're white labeling the solution, and it's now getting enterprise level clients and stuff like that.
So you sold out of the company, or
it was when I was working there. We had a period of time where we were merging two companies. We're merging the company that we were building and another company that was more commercially facilitated because it was backed by some very big entities in Norway.
Right.
This was more like an in-house spin-out type of thing for them, right?
Right.
So we merged those companies, but there's a lot of document and paperwork that needs to be done at that period of time, and pushing the company forward while we're both like figuring out how we're going to work together it couldn't be done. So it was like, okay, there's so much dead time now. We can't really do too much because we might misalign the companies more than intended by continuing down what we're doing without. So it just became not doing that much at that time. And then I found NFTs. That was literally the time that I found NFTs in that gap.
Yeah.
I found
real quick before we go down the NFT route, that time period. Advice to people that are building a company very, very quickly. One failure, one win. And what would you say to that person from your experience on what failure, to even be aware about or be successful?
I absolutely have one. Stop trying to polish your product into perfection before you take it to market. Biggest learning. Building a SaaS platform, trying to consistently make it pixel perfect with the pixel fucking doesn't work. Reach out to people, ask them, like, get them to try out your thing, like as soon as possible when you have something working. And get them to tell you what they like and what they want to see more out of.
Right.
That's definitely something that I would have called a sort of failure, because it could have cost less and come to market so much easier and so much quicker, and we could have arrived at the same conclusions at a way earlier stage than just sitting inside a room trying to find creative solutions to things that we didn't even know. It was just assumptions. Right? It was informed assumptions because we were gamers since we were kids, both of us. He was also a semi-professional CS player, and very capable.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the one. And then you said one success. The success is the iteration, the continuous iteration on, or the openness rather, potentially, to finding the pain point that you need to serve, right? Because we thought that we were a B2C company. We knew that we wanted to create an esports platform. We always knew,
Right.
like we do that all this time, right? And we knew that people would love the way that we were creating it, because it's literally taking um, the difficulties and the high barriers that are from other platforms and removing them,
Yeah.
making it more useful, making it easier to use, and making it more modular so that it can be continuously built out to fit better for what people need.
Right.
But what we didn't know is what market we were supposed to serve, right? We thought it was B2C. We believed that it was. We made some attempts, found it very difficult to penetrate that market, and then said, well, are there other people who might benefit of this product? Then did a small pivot, and then it was very successful.
Yeah.
So I think it is, at least at the early stages of a company, it's of course not necessarily something that you look into when you're an established company, but having the open-mindedness to be able to pivot.
Yeah.
Not pivot for pivot's sake, that there's a balance here. Not like, oh, this didn't immediately work, so we're just going to leave it.
Right.
But pivot and listen to other people's perspective. Bring in as many perspectives as you can.
Yeah.
Into it. Yeah.
Oh no, I love the insight. And the last thing, and then we'll do Web3. And one thing I need to work on is time management, in the sense that I just want to keep on hearing all of your awesome stuff. But people know that my content is about you, right? We're not really here to we'll talk about Web3, but we're here, and we're here the right reasons, because you have tons of great information to share. This question,
Appreciate that.
and this is a common thing that happens to entrepreneurs, which was like, in your words, pixel fucking, and just wasting your time.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that ego? Is that inexperience? Is that in your particular case, like,
you're making a general assumption that the quality that I prefer to see when I'm using a product is the same that my users are. So they don't, they want it to at least look decent, but it's more important what it does.
Yes.
Does it solve my problem or not?
Yeah.
Right. No. You're not, it depends on what you're doing as well. Like if you're selling a product off a shelf, sure, needs to be perfect, needs to be appealing looking.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to solve a more functional issue, then what it looks like is not necessarily as important. And this is, if you just like take a step back and you look at all the indie games and you look at all the old school products that people are using that theme, and it's some people might say it looks horrendous, but still, like Vampire Survivor, it's a pixel game, but it's one of the most iconic titles in indie games,
have spent hours on that. I literally was playing it last night because all the DLC, I hadn't looked at it for 6 months. And I'm like, holy shit, there's like 6 new DLCs. So I've just been literally playing through it every night. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Because so it doesn't necessarily need to be as polished as a AAA game.
Yeah.
In terms of the way that it looks, but it's what it does.
I love it. Awesome. No, great insight. Okay, so Web3. Let's do the TLDR. We've got about 15 minutes. I want to hit me up with your highlights and milestones within your Web3 journey. Feel free to touch on how you got into it as well. But I'm really interested in your milestones, these kind of monumental moments throughout your Web3 journey.
Okay, so I started out with the Mechaverse raffle. I thought that it all was.
You brought up Mechaverse. I didn't win it. I was there. Did you get one?
2.
Oh,
well, for
please
one,
tell me you sold them
one,
immediately.
And I didn't do any of this, like this botting bullshit or anything, because I was just like a normal person coming in and, okay, this is a raffle. I had some crypto back from 2017 when I was doing it back then. I'm like, okay, let me put some of this in here, because I was actually looking at the Bored Apes when they were coming out, when they were super cheap. But I
Yeah.
was like, why would I even buy this when I could just like take a picture and put it on my wall?
Right.
Like, why would I do that? Because I didn't understand. And nobody told me anything about the community behind it. Like that's the
Right.
missing component, like the most important, like the
Hmm.
essence of the entire thing. Nobody told me about that. They just told me that these digital pictures were going for money. I'm like, okay, cool, but sure. And then it started going up, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then I learned about the community part. I'm like, okay, this is definitely interesting. Let me have a dive in. Won the Mechaverse thing, sold like my first Mechaverse on revealed for 5.8 ETH.
Mm.
So, and that was when ETH was very high. So I'm like, okay,
Rocking.
what the heck is going on? Like how,
Hmm.
because I still didn't believe that this was actual money. So I'm
Yeah.
like, because I guess I was in crypto, but at the same time, the disbelief of like this sequence of things happening, won the
Right.
raffle, just immediately sold it at one of the highest points on the unrevealed. And I'm like, this is balances in my account from buying into a raffle for almost nothing and then getting this. And then like, how does this work? Like, how is
It doesn't
this
make sense.
profitable? Doesn't make any sense, right? Then I started learning about the community and the co-building together with the community from the founders as well, and the teams actually listening to their user base and building together with them. I'm like, this is just there's something here. Like this is magical in a sense
Hmm. Hmm.
compared to what I'm used to is this super corporate stuff where you're so disconnected from your audience until like you oh, this is our top of funnel and this is our
Yeah.
mid funnel and this
Yeah.
is our
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, cool, but that's like you have no personal relation to the people who are buying into the stuff that you're doing,
Absolutely.
and you don't bring the feedback to the surface either, really, right?
Right.
So I'm okay. Well, some are good at it, but at the same time, it's you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is something that I resonated with, like on a different level. Where I went
Yeah.
like, this is for me. Like this is exactly how I would want to do it if I could do
Same.
it. So I started really just becoming a part of a lot of different communities. But I was always viewing it from a business angle as well, and I understood it, and that's why I showed you, and I'm going to show here as well as if it shows on my camera.
Yep.
These are some of the trading cards, right?
Right.
This has value, but this
Right.
is also utilitarian. I
Right.
can take these cards and go and play with them.
Hmm.
This is why stocks didn't make sense for me because they were boring. But
Right.
I could take an NFT, I could go and talk to other people who also care about the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is a way for me to build a community and to build new relations with people around something that also carries value. And depending
Yes.
on how successful the community is and how successful the project is, it will increase in value and more people will it will appeal to more people. So the trading card game analogy directly translated into this vertical, in my opinion. So I understood why this worked in a sense when I started connecting the dots. And oh, okay, this is exactly why it works. It's been working since like the 90s, and it's in massively huge. It's the biggest revenue channel for Hasbro and gaming. It does billions a year of revenue. So I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Which allowed me very quickly to start giving my inputs to people about like how things, why things work, what doesn't work, what should work, what works historically. Um, Create these kind of transfers of knowledge into Web3. Um, Became a part of a few different teams early on, early stages of their projects, and kind of jumped around a little bit early on, just trying to figure out where I wanted to be, and then that's where um, I helped a project build a game economy at one point, which was successful. Um, I met one of the founders of PG in a random chat somewhere. We just had
Yeah.
the same thought processes of, yes, this is going fast. Yes, this is great. This is cool, but it needs to mature. There
Yeah.
needs for this to be a viable business for everybody. We need certain checks and balances, and certain things need to change. Like it's going super fast, but like let's like step back for a moment and look at what the missing components are. If this is going to be taken seriously by the masses, we need certain things and etc. So we vibed very early on. Got brought into a private community of 100 people. There we were few different people there actually became some of the bigger KOLs, and some became the team of the same project, the PG project. Um, Came in there at C-level position there. After all this, has done a little bit of advising in the background for projects and stuff like that. Um, Decided that something that was very profitable and fun, um, and something that I wanted to pursue and the company wanted to pursue was a launchpad and consultancy.
Yeah.
Because I love the ever changingness of it as well. And then
Yeah.
being able to work with the most amount of entrepreneurs that I can and projects that I can and help interesting ideas come to market was like a dream
Right.
for me. It's like,
Right.
geez, I can like be on the bottom floor with all of these projects, listening to their concepts, listening to what they want to create and how they want to leverage the technology into creating something new and something interesting and something for people to interact with.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Of course,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
So did that for about 2 years. Launched a series of projects, helped launch a series of projects, all of them successful in the market, like getting to market. Market is what it is. Like if we're all going to be honest, like 90% or more probably of the projects, there were 90, close to 95% of projects that disappeared.
Yep.
Hard to find project market fit. Others front running that have bigger brands, for example, a bigger brand does the same thing as you, but not as good, but doesn't matter because they have a bigger brand. There's so many things, right? It's a competitive
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to fault anybody or any project for anything because they tried something really cool. They
Yeah.
probably learned a lot. The communities got to be a part of the journey. Um, and for better or for worse, Web3 is what it is, and it's an emerging market. There's going to be a lot of failures. There's going to be a lot of learnings. There's going to be a lot of positives as well. But not everything is going to work. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and then realized that okay, uh, I'm not ethically maybe happy with in a bear market telling projects that that you should be launching. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
launchpad kind of dialed down from or everything in the market dialed down. So I'm like, okay, I also want to try to do something else potentially because I've done this for a while now. I've tried it out, but this is a big market, so I want to be a part of as much as I can over time, of course. Now instead of doing all of it at the same time, doing it in sequence. So doing
Yeah.
different things at different points in time. To note as well, I was actually doing two jobs at this time. I was doing the esports one and the launchpad at the same time. So I was
Yeah.
working Monday to Sunday, 16 hours a day for about 2 years. So I'm like, oh, I'm also kind of tired. So maybe I should do something else and try and do something else. And I did. So I went into a deep tech company, headed their Web3 division for a period of time, about almost a year, and then I realized this corporate is just, or more corporate is not for me.
Yeah.
In the sense of it's just nothing. The company is doing something massively impressive. I still talk to them frequently. Very good friends with the guys over there. I'm also a seed investor in their company, so like I really believe in what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, entrepreneurship is what's for me. I need a more fast paced, building something, pushing it to market, and then like literally kind of moving on to the next thing. That's more of the way that I work. Like
Yeah.
I get a little bit bored, is if that's the right word, with things over time, right?
Yeah.
So like you said it yourself as well, you get bored eventually,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it's like the part of concepting it, finding product market fit, finding the revenue channels, pushing it to market.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, now I'm good. Like this was
Yeah.
fun. This was super fun, super interesting. Made a lot of learnings, but there's going to be a new idea that pops up, or there's going to be something else that comes up that I want to try. And
100%.
this brought up the syndication, so the investment syndication. I'd done the launch padding and consultancy for a while, so I understood the back part of it, right?
Yeah.
So the companies, I did everything else than the investment at that point, right? I invested myself in Web3, but I didn't necessarily find funding for them outside of pushing it to market with a good go-to-market strategy and
Right.
allowing retail or users to come in and buy. Um, Now was more, okay, um, different type of crowd, talking about seed investments and all of these things, right? These different rounds and these doing all of the due diligence for the companies in a different perspective. Right now, I'm
Yeah.
not doing the diligence in the sense of okay, we want to see if there's something here where we can help these guys go to market and see if this is a project for us that we want to bring onto a launch pad and bring to market. It's more of okay, these guys are a little bit further ahead. They have more or less have everything. They're ready for funding now. do we believe in the vision of this company? Do we believe in the integrity and the strength of the team? Do we believe in the tokenomics, like the way that they're positioning their internal economy? Is that going to work? Like, do we believe, blah, blah, blah. All of these components, right? I find this incredibly fun and interesting.
Yeah.
And I still do. So I did that for about 8 months, 8 or 9 months as well. And I was just startup things. It's like sometimes you better off just being friends or acquaintances than a team. Like, it's just startup things. It happens. And I also had some ideas of things that I wanted to do that just came to me throughout this journey. That, okay, I have some ideas of things that I wanted to do. I'm like, had a bit of a sit down with myself. I'm like, okay, I think it's, I think I'm going to move on, and I'm going to focus on my own ideas again.
Love it.
Right? Because it's been a long journey. As like me explaining through this is like, I've started in a place where I was a solo entrepreneur. Then I realized, okay, I don't necessarily want to be a solo entrepreneur as well. I want to work with a team. I want to build a company with a team. And then I did that for a while. And then now I'm kind of rotating back to, not necessarily a solo entrepreneur, but like starting something maybe myself. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, but keeping it moving. Yeah.
So this is a great place to start winding it down. And we're going to have another episode, because I think people would be learn a lot from you. You just briefly went over the Web3 stuff, but I think we could dive deep, because I think there's lots of learning lessons.
Tried to be brief.
Yeah, no, so you did great job. There's a lot of learning lessons there. And here's my frustration with the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it, the good things in my mind, are happening in the background and are not public. You've got a lot of KOLs out there with misinformation. The hype is really about, oh, you can make money 1,000x overnight, 100x overnight, and that's really the narrative. In my mind, well, that's not in my mind. My question for you is, with everything that you've been exposed in Web3, what do you think is the part that really excites you? Are you still stuck on the community, the brand building side? What should people be paying attention to in your mind?
It's a very tough question. I've always viewed it from a potentially different perspective, even since I came in, is that I believed in the long-term value of the technology, because that's why I was involved in 2017 as well.
Yes.
Because I felt like maybe I'm way too early and there's just way too much chaos. So I'm going to take a break. And then did start investing into projects back in, I don't know, what was it, 2019, 2020, somewhere like there. Started getting a little bit more involved in just investing in tokens and stuff like this through launch pads. But I've always viewed it from, I believe in the long term of this ecosystem. So I might have very, very, very different opinions.
But that's totally fine.
So
and I think
I look at an investment horizon of that is probably more into the years than the months. Right?
Yeah.
BTC started at and went under $1 as well with the Mt. Gox hack. Now it's been up to 70 somewhat $1,000. It took years for that to happen, for that to mature. Right. Also, parts of, I don't think that necessarily the most valuable companies in Web3 have even been created yet.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about sticking with it, believing in the narratives and the technology of where it actually improves. So I've said things that might go against what other people believe, but I'm almost at the point where I say, view a token as the worst thing that you can do for your company. And then when you go through your product again, if you arrive at the same conclusion at the end of it, when you go through the entire product and you still say, well, we can't do it without a token, like the
Yeah.
actual product doesn't make any sense without a token,
Yeah.
then make a token.
Yeah.
If that's not the conviction or the right, like the what you measure it from, then probably a token is not important for your product.
100%.
Or you can create a lot of great products with blockchain that does not have its own token.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It still will add value to the
Yeah.
ecosystem, even though it doesn't have its own token.
Yeah. So
So yeah.
I think you said it right. And you I think gave the most the biggest insight that everybody needs to hear. And listen, man, this is the number one lesson from the 200 plus founders I've talked to. It is about discipline and persistency and hard work over a very long period of time.
Yes.
And when I say very long, I'm talking 5+ years. I'm talking 10 plus years, right? And there's Web3 is no different, even though they want to sell you this shiny wrapper that it's a new technology and everything's going to change. It's like, listen, the true people that are changing the space, that, like you said, the biggest companies haven't even been born yet because we're still trying to figure this stuff out, right?
Yep.
That is such a great learning lesson. And to come from a person like you, I think is very, very impactful. So I think that's it, man. I think you actually answered the question beautifully without even knowing it. And I do have a hard stop because, dude, we're going to have, like I said, another podcast for the 500th time. To wind it down, I always ask one more question. But before we get there, I want to give you a chance to take a couple minutes or a little bit of time to just talk about anything about the future of what you're doing that you want to share, the future of Web3, what that looks like to you.
So on my own part, I have some ideas, and I'm currently working through it, validating the ideas, which is going really well. So I don't want to share anything, to be honest,
Totally cool.
about it.
Totally cool.
But it is being validated quite well by the right people. So that's something that I'm going to put my focus towards.
Yeah.
I also want to consider doing advisory for companies that I find interesting,
Nice.
that I think has the right of life and just needs some guidance.
Yeah.
And maybe need the right connections and need to talk to the right people, need to put the puzzle pieces into the right spots for them to take off. That I want to still continue doing, because that's a part of, I think people have understood, hopefully through this podcast, of who I am. Is like, I like things to be new and switching and changing, which that allows me to do through advising different companies for periods of time that they need it. And then I can move on. We're both happy, or stay on for long. It depends on the company, of course, and what they need. Yeah. And then you said like the vision for like where I think Web3 is going.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more focus on. I think we've done like a complete circle. We're about to do a complete circle. Yeah. So we went into the intangible, hyper speculative. Nobody even knows if this has any value, but we believe that it does. That was fueled by communities. And also, I think it was a part of being in a bear market for so long. Something new, enticing came along that we could invest in and we could all enjoy and have fun together with.
Yeah.
Which was NFTs. But now we're moving more into RWAs, deep in AI, tangible things, tangible technology that actually has already somewhat an established model in the real world. Right? These are physical objects that are placed around the world for deep in RWA. Same thing, this real estate, it's commodities. These are things that are already proven, things that can be iterated and improved upon, and we can unlock new value streams, value for these specific market verticals,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And AI as well is like proving itself by the day, right? Like how useful it is. And then, so I think we're coming full circle. Like we're going out of, okay, this was hysteria. We don't know if it's going to be worth anything. It isn't proven. We have no idea. It's completely new. Now,
Yeah.
okay, we're going back out of like, we're still going to stay in a speculative area, but maybe not like a hyper speculative area
Yeah.
where it's more clear to us what the value is.
Right.
And
I
we're going to
love it.
focus on that. So
Yeah.
I think it's the whole part of like human beings were very bad at being moderate. We're very good at being either left or right.
Yeah.
Right. So we were left and now we're going right. And
Yeah.
then we're going to go into hyper speculative after this becomes boring or whatever. It becomes very established. Then there's going to be a new technology that is incredibly speculative and we don't know it's going to work. And that's what everybody's going to gravitate towards.
I love it. No, and I think that's a great way to say it too. But I think I see it too, talking to founders, right? I talked to a lot of people in the beginning that they were just riding the hype, man. And I talked to a lot more of people like you that have built businesses, entrepreneurs, and are trying to think of how are we going to use this technology to actually build something tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice and refreshing to have those conversations. So
Absolutely.
we are at the moment to really shut down the podcast. And this is how I do it. I ask you one last question, and then I'll say my closing comments, and we'll say goodbye.
For sure.
If you can stay on for like a quick minute after I end the recording,
Mm-hmm.
we will I'll do a little bit of wrap up, and then we'll call it a day.
Sounds good.
So, last question. You have seen podcasts. You have probably been in a bajillion spaces or seen kind of public talking events within the Web3 industry or in general. How do you think your experience on the Midlife Crisis podcast went today? Please give me any feedback. I would love your feedback because I know you are a very analytical, critical thinker mind.
I think it's been great. Um, it definitely shows that you've done this a ton of times before.
Yes.
You're very good at it.
Thank you.
And it allowed me the time to explain the things that I wanted to try to explain.
Yeah.
Without any form of like interjections or like you don't have a lot of extra stuff happening, right? Like it's we need to break for whatever, right?
Right.
It became quite fluid through this. And you asked good questions that made me feel like you're genuinely interested in what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
Thank
no,
you,
I had an
man.
amazing time, to be honest.
Thank
I don't
you.
have any notes. Like you really know
Thank
how
you.
to do this. Yeah.
I really appreciate it, man. And it really warms my heart when I get feedback like that because that's exactly what I'm going for. I think what we did today is critically important. I think as we continue to get more connected, we're more disconnected than ever before, right? And what we did, somebody's going to watch this and someone's going to understand your background. Someone's going to have a horrific thing happen to their family as well. And you're going to give them the strength to understand that it can be okay and you can turn bad things into good things. And that everyone goes through horrible struggles.
Yeah.
And you have, I think one of the most poignant things is we have a very short time on this thing, you see that one of the famous videos of like, some philosopher showing a string of rope, right? And it's like, hey, if you're 40, you're halfway through that string already, and it's a very small amount of time. That's one of the most things that you said that impacted me most. And I think really my closing comments are, like I said, man, digital campfire. We just built a friendship through a podcast, which is just a magical thing. And I cannot wait to continue our friendship, continue to start chatting and help each other out, man. I hope we can continue to figure out how to collaborate, grow, win, make Web3 better, but just make our lives continually better together, right? Really
Absolutely.
resonated with a lot of the things that you said. And you got vulnerable, man. Like it was really cool
You
to
have
see.
to.
Yeah, you do. You do. And people
You're
do.
not genuinely helping anybody if you're trying to paint this Instagram picture life. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. That's one of the worst things that's happened, right? Is everyone looks at Instagram, they think that's real life, and it's so far from the truth.
And then they start measuring themselves by it, and they feel horrible. It's
not what it is. But the thing that I was gonna get at, though, which I thought was beautiful to see, is I could see your mind in the beginning, who you are, right? Analytical and really thinking about it. But there was a moment in time, and I don't even know what we were talking about, but I just saw like the shoulders roll back a little bit, and you're like, all right, man, I'm really getting into this right now, you know? And I saw that change over time, and it was beautiful to see, and I'm glad we could get there. And I think we're going to be able to have some more podcasts in the future. I really do want to bring you back on to just talk about Web3 in general, because I think that education is critical, because what you see on crypto Twitter and what you see at a lot of these places, it doesn't help anybody, right?
Nope.
It actually just it perpetuates the bullshit that is Web3 and what people think it is, right? So I think that conversation is critical. And then finally, I'm just going to say thank you, man. Like, you're incredibly successful. Your time is by far the most valuable thing you have, and you just gave me an hour and 52 minutes of it, and it felt like 15 minutes. So I thank you so much. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And with that being said, I am late for a meeting. I gotta really get going, but I love you all. Ruben, it's been a fantastic journey. Midlife Crisis podcast is done for the day. Mikey G and Ruben are out.
Thanks, guys.